Welcome to this episode of the Alignment with Jen podcast. I am your host, Jen Ditzazy, and today we're going to be talking about the dopamine trap. So this is all about why your brain becomes addicted to the wrong habits and how to make it addicted to the habits that make you hotter, richer, more beautiful, more fun, more smart, all of the kinds of habits that you want to be addicted to. This episode is going to be your guidebook for that. So I'm really excited about this. I've been diving so much into the science of habits and dopamine and the dopamine system in our brains. And I've done some of these sessions with my own group, and it's been super transformational. So I'm excited to just lay this out for you, give you this playbook of really how do I shift my habits on a biological level so I can actually become the version of myself that I want to be easily, where I don't have to effort against myself. So I want you to just kind of play with me for a second. Imagine that you hire an employee and this employee starts off great, right? Where she's doing everything you ask. She's doing all of the things that you want her to do. And then all of a sudden she kind of slips a little bit, right? Maybe you ask her to edit 10 reels and she edits 8 of them. Right? Maybe you ask her to show up to a meeting on time. She shows up 10 minutes late. There's all these little subtle things that she's not quite doing exactly right. Would you promote this employee when she comes to you and she's like, I'm ready for more responsibility. I want to be promoted. Would you promote her? Probably not, right? A lot of my clients, what they said when I asked them this question is they're like, well, I'd put her on like a performance improvement plan. Very sweet, right? They'll work with her. But no, you wouldn't promote her. You're not going to give her more responsibility. This is exactly how your subconscious mind views you. When you do not show up for yourself, when you do not show up for the habits, for the type of person that you say that you want to be and the life that you say that you want to have, your subconscious mind is like, I don't know. She hasn't really been handling all these things she said she was going to do very well. So it doesn't really feel safe to go to this next level, to give her more responsibility. So your subconscious mind will resist it in a way. The universe operates in the same way. There's a book called The Millionaire Mind. And in the book, he talks about a little kid. And if you were to give a little kid an ice cream scoop, and this little kid got that ice cream scoop all over the walls, are you going to turn around and then give that little kid 2 ice cream scoops? Obviously not, right? That sounds like a mess. The universe operates in the same way. When you do not show that you can handle and are responsible with the resources that you've been given, time, money, energy, experience, the universe is not going to give you more of those things until you build that vessel to hold it. So this episode is really about how do we hack our biology of our brain to become addicted to those habits that are in alignment with that version of myself. I love this stuff. I think it's so cool. I want you to understand that it is not a lack of willpower. It is not a lack of desire. It is not a lack of discipline for many people that they struggle with their habits. Oftentimes it's that they've literally wired their brains to go after the wrong things, very unassumingly. The dopamine system within our brain oftentimes gets associated with being a reward system, right? You get it when you are rewarded. A dog gets dopamine when the dog gets food. So the dog wants to get more food, right? That's partially how it works. But what it works on is it's a chemical for motivation, for anticipation, for drive, for follow through and following through on things that you want to do. And it also reinforces our identity. Dopamine goes off and it feels good in the brain in order to reinforce certain behaviors. So if we are constantly firing our dopamine system to go off on things that are not beneficial for us, like scrolling on our phones, like texting our ex-boyfriend, like going on dating apps and messaging random people, I don't know what you're doing. If we're doing that, then we're wasting our dopamine, because what happens is our brain becomes resistant to dopamine when we're constantly using it on these cheap sources of dopamine. So what I'm going to highlight for you is first cheap dopamine, and then I'll give you the alternative in a little bit. When we are scrolling on our phones, the way social media is designed to be addictive is on our dopamine system, and in order to make us want to come back and come back. But what we're actually doing is we're creating resistance so that way we have less dopamine when we want to do the things that actually benefit us. Sugar, constant notifications, shopping, right? When you go on TikTok and there's all these opportunities to buy things, it feels really good, but it's actually toying with our dopamine system, and it's developing the dopamine system in a way that isn't actually great. Right? Texting, Netflix, where you have all these options and you can just keep kind of choosing different options. It's these quick hits of dopamine that we get. right? One of my clients told me, she was like, I think that I actually get a lot of dopamine from going into ChatGPT and just asking questions. It feels good, but it's not necessarily, I'm not doing anything. I'm not making any progress. I'm just kind of asking questions, right? So I want to pose this question to you of, where are you getting cheap dopamine from? And really think about your own life, right? What are things that you do to kind of feel good, but they don't actually help you in any way? For me, I love ordering from Uber Eats, and I love it, but I don't always order the best things, right? I get some cheap dopamine from that order. So notice for yourself what it might be. The issue with the cheap dopamine is that we get it very quickly, so it becomes addictive. The higher self dopamine, which is what we want to move toward, and that's just a name I came up with. I think it's super cute, and it helps us kind of learn this concept, is given on completion or on progress of an activity. So cheap dopamine, quick hits. So it's easy to get addicted to something. This is literally how illicit drugs work, is they get you addicted by giving you these boosts of positive chemicals very quickly. But higher self dopamine, the kind of dopamine that develops us into our higher self, into the version of ourself that we want to be, it requires a little bit more effort. It requires more integration. It requires us to become this version. So typically what will happen when we are used to all of these cheap sources of dopamine, the brain learns, well, I can just get dopamine from going on my phone and scrolling, or I can just get dopamine from eating something that's not necessarily super good for me, or, looking at all of my notifications, when those are not habits that are building the identity that we want to create. So what we want to do is we want to start leveraging our dopamine system to create the identity that we want to create, because identity is the strongest driving force in our lives. You will do so much to prove your identity to be true. And so we want to use your biology to support that identity. Your identity is who I believe that I am. And our habits are a huge force that builds our identity. It builds our sense of worthiness. If we're not showing up for our business that we want to create, are we really unconsciously going to believe that we're worthy of a successful business? No. It is through our actions that we build that belief of worthiness. That's a big part of it, is, am I showing up for myself how I want to show up? Let's talk about higher self dopamine. So higher self dopamine is dopamine that comes as you develop the habits that actually build you into the type of person that you want to be. So this could be habits that build self-trust. This could be nervous system regulating habits. This could be habits that align with the life that you want to live. So we want to upgrade the source of dopamine that we are experiencing. So how do we do that? Well, dopamine, yes, can happen instantly from these cheap dopamine habits, and it can actually deplete our dopamine. So the first thing we want to do is reduce the amount of activities that we do that generate cheap dopamine, so we're not just burning through our dopamine. If you wake up in the morning and you're just scrolling, you're burning through a lot of your dopamine, so it's going to be harder to be motivated later in the day, because motivation is supported by this dopamine system. It's just supported in a different way. So what happens is when you begin to engage in activity, let's say that you want to write content for your business, for social media. Initially, you might feel some resistance, right? So some people will go and scroll to get that cheap dopamine, which just makes the situation worse. But if you sit down and you get started on that task, what is going to happen is after they say about 10 minutes, when you feel some sense of progress, you're actually going to get a hit of dopamine. So if you can just start that activity, then it's going to give you dopamine along the way. And you're going to get even more dopamine at the end when you complete that task. So these behaviors, though, are harder to reinforce because you're not getting that instant quick hit. You're needing to start and make progress on the activity and then complete it in order to receive all of that dopamine. What we want to do is first reduce those cheap dopamine activities. Then we want to allow ourselves the chance to make progress on activities that align with the identity that we want. So it could be creating content. It could be going for a walk, if that's something that you want, or going to the gym, right? We always feel good when we leave the gym, not only because of the endorphins, but also because we've completed a task. Completing tasks really helps with this as well. So I want to share with you some of the habits that you can use in order to create more of these habits and leverage this dopamine system and create more of these higher self dopamine habits. So what I recommend is listen to this episode and then come back and listen to it again after you've made a list of cheap dopamine habits and higher self dopamine habits. And then you can think through how you're going to apply these tools that I'm going to give you. The first thing that we can do to help ourselves build these habits is shrink the promise that we are making to ourselves. So oftentimes, if we say, I'm going to write 10 pieces of content today, that can feel really, really overwhelming. Or if we say, I'm going to start my business today, or I'm going to apply to 15 jobs today, or I'm going to apply to jobs for 2 hours. Those promises can feel really, really big to our minds. So what we want to do is we want to shrink the promise. That way we can get that initial 10 minutes in. Because if we can get that initial 10 minutes in, we're going to get some dopamine. It's going to be easier to continue with that promise. I did this when I started my first business, my first supplement business. I didn't know how to start a business. I had never started a business. I knew nothing about supplements. I knew nothing. I was going in blind. So I told myself, okay, I'm going to work on this for 15 minutes every single day. I didn't know this principle, but it worked incredibly well. I created a full business from it. It went really well. And it started because I shrunk the promise to myself. I made success showing up for 15 minutes a day. And then when I had momentum, I wanted to show up, right? It was easier. I had that pull. I had that identity of someone who runs a successful business built in because I shrunk that promise. So you can do that to yourself. What I recommend is if you say, let's say you want to start working out, is set a smaller goal. Don't say, I'm going to work out every day this year or five days a week for an entire year. Say, I'm going to do a 30-day challenge and I'm going to work out 3 days a week or 5 days a week for 30 minutes for the 30 days, right? And if that feels overwhelming, shrink it even more because all we want is momentum. All we want is just to get that ball rolling down the hill. And then you're going to get that dopamine and that system's going to take over and help you. And eventually you're going to have so much dopamine moving toward the person that you want to be that it's going to be so easy for you to align with those habits. The next thing that I want you to think about is do not reward yourself for the outcome, reward yourself for the progress. So oftentimes we don't celebrate ourselves enough, we don't reward ourselves enough, and what we're doing is we're actually not leveraging the power of our dopamine system. When we reward ourselves for the 15 minutes a day, when we reward ourselves for going to the gym today versus getting the 6-pack, which is the outcome, then we leverage that system because it's like, ooh, I got rewarded, I got celebrated, right? So then we want to do it again. Our brain is like a salivating dog and wants to do it again and again and again. The way that you can do this is really, really simple. And what I recommend is keeping a list of the habits that you want to cultivate. And literally, this is so simple, just check it off. Check it off from the list. When you exercise, go and check it off. I know you know that feeling of satisfaction when you check something off the list and you're not imagining it. It is your dopamine system is like, ooh, yes, we completed a task. That feels good. I want to do that again. And the more that you check those things off, the better. But you can even give yourself a bigger reward. Maybe once you go to the gym afterward, you get to do something that you've been really wanting to do, right? You can build these rewards in for yourself, and that's going to allow you to create more of that dopamine. But I don't recommend using cheap dopamine activities as the reward. Like don't use scrolling as the reward because you're going to deplete that system more. If you do, then just use it for a very small amount as a reward. Another really great way to build in these habits is to stack them with habits that you already have. This is so simple. So what you can do is, let's say that you want to be somebody that goes on a 30-minute walk every single morning. Okay, what do you do already every single morning? You probably brush your teeth. Maybe you feed your dog. So what you're going to do is you're going to tack that habit onto something you already do. Okay, whenever I go feed my dog, I go on a walk afterward. Or I go on a walk after I brush my teeth every single morning. I started doing this where every day I always planned my day the night before, and I wanted to be better about seeing my finances. So I told myself, okay, I already have the habit of planning my day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5 minutes onto that, and I'm going to just look at my finances and just get them organized every single day. And so I built that habit really easily because I just tacked it on to something I already did. So you already have some positive habits, I guarantee it. So what can you do to tack these habits on to what you are already doing so successfully? So simple, right? All of these little hacks can make such a big, big, big difference. I wanted to also share with you some of the habits that I personally have found to have the highest impact, because these are ones that create a cascade effect. So what I mean by a cascade effect is nothing we do is in isolation, right? You brushing your teeth is not just to brush your teeth in the moment. It's that way you have fresh breath all day, right? You don't feel self-conscious in a conversation because you have stinky breath. You prevent having cavities 6 years from now by brushing your teeth today, right? There's this whole cascade that happens. And there's a lot of cascades that we can leverage in our day that create way bigger benefits and allow us to be more consistent with the habits that we want to create and the type of person that we want to be. Because really, our identity is largely formed by our habits. It's a big, big component of it. One of the things that really is huge to get right is sleep, because sleep is essentially the most foundational habit that we have. So there's lots of podcasts out there on sleep. I'm not going to really go into habits to create around sleep, but what I recommend is a really simple one that I've heard over and over and over again to improve your sleep, and this has helped me a lot, is just going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, because you start to build in this rhythm into your life, and it's easier for you to be successful with those habits. Another habit that you could stack onto that is not scrolling on your phone for the first 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours or so of your day, because then you're not leveraging that dopamine system improperly and draining your dopamine, because it's going to make it harder to be more motivated and have more energy throughout the day if you start it by scrolling. So those are a couple of the habits. Another one is a lot of these habits are in the morning time, because our morning habits really set us up for the rest of the day. So another one is just drinking water. You can put sea salt in it or electrolytes first thing when you wake up. That sets your whole rhythm all day, your hormonal system, your energy system, to be so much more powerful and work so much better. These are all kind of habits that make all your other habits easier. And they're so simple. They really don't take that much time. Another one that I find really, really beneficial is when I wake up, when my eyes are first opening, that's when our subconscious mind is still open, when we're first waking up and when we're first going to sleep. So if you can have a couple of sentences that you say to yourself when you're first waking up, today's going to be a great day. I'm so excited to see what miracles come to me today. I can't wait to, and then something you're going to do that day. Eat breakfast today. Something really simple, but what you're doing is you're literally priming your mind to think more positively all day. It seems so simple, but I promise you it works exceptionally well. So just try it. Try it when you wake up in the morning. These are some really, really, really simple habits that you can start with. Another one that I recommend is also designing your day the night before. Looking at your day, even if you work in an office and you do similar things all day, really looking at your day, because rather than being reactive to the day, you want to be proactive and you want to say, who do I want to show up as tomorrow? I'm actually going to make my time reflect that. I think for me, this is single-handedly one of the most beneficial habits I've ever created, because I'm actually creating who I want to be by deciding how I want to spend my time versus being reactive to emails in my inbox, right? Clients reaching out. I'm deciding how I want to handle those things. I'm deciding beforehand who I want to be. So that's a really beneficial habit as well. The last piece that I want to just share with you of how to get started with this is I don't recommend starting with 10 different habits that you're going to launch right away. I recommend maybe picking 2 and being consistent with those for a while, and then becoming consistent with new ones once those are already built in. Because what you're doing is you're building that momentum. Building positive habits that align with the identity that you want to be is all about building and maintaining that positive momentum. So when you can be successful, even with 2 really simple habits, maybe it's going to bed and waking up at the same time and drinking some water when you wake up, what you are doing is you're telling your subconscious mind, I am someone who follows through. I follow through so I can handle more responsibility. I can handle more opportunities. So your subconscious mind will start to see that, because there's this whole relationship going on inside of you trusting you. And when we don't show up for ourselves consistently, we are building a fractured relationship with ourselves. So something to think about. What are a couple of habits that you can apply, and using some of these tools in order to apply them? So I hope you have loved this episode. I love this kind of stuff. Leave me a comment. I would love to hear your responses. And if you are interested in going deeper into any of these topics with me, the subconscious mind, the nervous system, send me a message on Instagram and I will send you a short 5-minute video on my coaching program where we go deep into really allowing you to become the best version of yourself. All right, bye.